what did you do to try to deal with the past?
So I sat outside and I hit that J, and it seemed like the creator just was having a conversation with me. I'm looking at the trees blowing. I'm looking at the leaves blowing. I'm just hearing the birds chirping. And the creator and I, we having a conversation about my next 5 years of my life, right? And I'm sitting down there and I'm sitting on that deck and we hitting that J. And I heard it clear as day was, "You're not finished." Because at that point in my life, I thought I was done. Meaning, when I mean by I say I thought I was done, I thought that I was even about to do a whole bunch of jail time, or I was going to face death.
Hi, good evening. Thanks again. Welcome back to Roadmap Podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have someone I consider a friend, Mr. Derrick Colbert. Have had the opportunity to work with him, and so I think that it's going to be amazing. He's got a triumphant story. He's overcame a lot and has been doing a lot of things for the community in DC. So we will get into that. But in our conversation, it came up, and I want to shout out for the first time the artist that has done this work on the wall. This is a local DC artist. And she is on Instagram, and you can follow her at Renee Chris Art, and it's Renee Chris Art. She is a Southeast DC native, and she does amazing art. So please follow her, check her out, and so let's get this started. So Derrick, tell me about who you are today. Let's start off. Who do you represent today?
First and foremost, thanks for having me on your wonderful podcast. My name is Derrick Colbert. I'm a native Washingtonian, born and raised in Ward 8 Southeast, been there my whole entire life. I would say I would categorize myself as a father, a son, a husband, and it's a champion of the people. You know, I love the work that I do. I value family amongst everything, and that's just who I am as a person.
I think that's honestly some of the things that I found super valuable about you, and part of the reason why it was kind of exciting to talk to you, because not only are you somebody who I value their opinion and is knowledgeable, but even during COVID, more than anything, I've seen you talk about your family, your wife, your children, and for me, I think that is, especially as I'm getting older, I think that is really what shows the value of a person, you know, outside of money and status. Like, how do you treat your family? And I think that's been a beautiful thing to see you just, you know, out in the community, but also just taking care of home base. So we start off with who you are today. Let's take a step back. Let's go back to your humble beginnings. You said that you were raised here in DC. Exactly where? Where in DC are you from, for our listeners who sometimes have no idea the complexities of the district?
So DC is broken into 8 wards. I reside and I grew up in Ward 8, Washington, D.C., Southeast. I was born in Greater Southeast Hospital. My mother still resides in the Bellevue community over in Ward 8. And also my grandparents raised us in the Congress Heights neighborhood. So I grew up between Bellevue and Congress Heights in Ward 8.
Okay, and they're still there, you said?
So my mom is still there. My grandmother passed away during the COVID, but we still own the house in Congress Heights, yes.
And this is the first time I'm seeing you in person, so I am sorry to hear about the loss. That wasn't, you had a couple more losses too that you've had with COVID, right?
That was the major one.
Okay.
That was the major one for
How's
me.
the family doing now?
You know, we still working through it, to be honest with you. You know, we really didn't have the opportunity to properly grieve the way that we wanted to, because we really couldn't bury my grandmother the way that we wanted to due to COVID. My grandmother was really the matriarch of the family. You know, she raised us to make sure that family was the first and foremost of everything that we done and everything that we do. She had 16 kids. You know, my mom is the fourth child of 16 kids. We 77 grandkids, and it's countless of great grandkids and great grandkids. So, you know, family. That's where I get my family values from. My grandmother, to be honest with you. Not only my grandmother, but my father and my grandfather as well, and also my mom as well. So that's where it comes from.
No, I think that's beautiful. And what a blessing to be able to even see. You said 77 grandkids?
77 grandkids.
And great grandkids that she has.
It's just too many great grandkids to number. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Yeah. So you said that you were raised by your mom. Now, was your mom and your father together, or was she a single mom kind of doing it on her own?
Well, they was together early on in my childhood. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. We're 4 boys. My mom adopted my cousin. Okay. So I'm the youngest of 4 boys. My father left the house when I was 10 years old. We're 9 years old, 9 going to turn 10, because, he was the streets got the best of him, you know. He decided to use heroin, and heroin took the best of him. He had a hard time dealing with the death of his college roommate and also his best friend as well. So by him trying to figure out how to navigate life, the needle got the best of him. And so we was forced to remove him from out of the household. And by that incident really started a downward spiral, I would say, in my life, but also it really taught me a lot about life as well. So from the age of 10 until roughly 22, 23 years old, I lived my life in a very grown, reckless manner. Okay. I'll say it that way.
So how did that change your mom? And I mean, I think that it's important because listeners don't really know DC, and it's a hard place to kind of understand. But even for somebody like me, the first thing I remember us talking about when we get here now and we see DC as it is, and it's beautiful and it's changing. And then the first thing that you hear from a native is, well, this wasn't like this, this is not what DC used to be like. So give the audience an idea of what DC, if they've traveled to DC now, it's not what it was. So give them an idea of what growing up in DC, especially maybe Southeast, not really sure it was much different than a lot of what DC was back in the day, but yeah.
So to answer your first question, it changed my mom for the better, in my opinion, right? Because it made my mom hustle that much more. It made my mom realize that, she had to be the one to really hold down her boys and hold down her sons and really be that provider and that caretaker that we needed at that time. We talking about in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s here in D.C., and if you think about any inner city during that time, you can think about everything that inner city males and females was experiencing at that time. But my mom never let us go hungry. She never allowed us to see the poverty line. She never allowed us to see her struggle, to be honest with you. My mom was always the type of person, she always been super religion, super spiritual, and she always relied on her higher power and her faith to see her through. And the thing is about that, it really taught me and my brothers the art of the hustle, to be honest with you. It taught us that regardless of what life throw your way, you always can overcome. My mom never talked ill about my father. Even to this day, she still don't. My dad, he has recovered. He's been in recovery for the past 40 years. So he's doing well for himself as well, and that's where I got a lot of my inspiration from as well. But my mom, she always kept her car. She always kept food in the house. She always kept clothes on our backs, right? And my mom worked for the federal government as well. She worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture for 37 years.
Oh, wow.
So back then, she was a federal government worker, and she was earning some pretty good money as well. So she tried everything in her power to keep me and my brothers from out of the streets. But coming from a large family, you just can imagine the pull of black males during that time, And not only that, the pull of the community and the pull of the neighborhoods as well. So she done everything in her power to keep us from out of the streets. But I jumped off the porch and I didn't return for years later.
So tell me about that.
So for folks that don't know, jumping off the porch meaning that you decided to go into the streets. So when my father left the house, I had a void inside of me because my dad was my superhero. And So when I seen my superhero fall victim to the kryptonite, right? And when I seen my Superman fall victim to the kryptonite, it done something to me. And I wanted the whole world to feel my pain. And I made a vow to myself when I had tears running down my eyes when I couldn't let them back into the house that I was going to allow the world to feel my pain. So I started being a runner. A runner is back then was someone that will actually run drugs for the older guys and for the older people in the neighborhoods. Fortunately, no one wanted me to do it, but I had to force myself into it because I started stealing stashes back then, and I was taking the older guys' stashes and I was selling them. They were like, man, hold up. Like, why? You taking my stash from me and you are actually selling my stash. So they tried their best to keep me out of it, but they couldn't keep me out of it. So I started running drugs from there for them, and it just trickled from that. So from the age of 10 to 12 years old, I was a runner. At the age of 12, I was actually able to get my own package. And back then, I had a package. And back then, I had 100 package, right? So 100 packages back then was $1,000. Okay. Think about a 12-year-old being able to make $500 in a day. And
some people not doing that.
And we talking about 1986, 1987.
Right.
You know, $500 a day. That was a lot of money to me. So I started being a runner. From a runner, I graduated into being a seller. From a seller, I graduated to doing some things on my own. And that wasn't the thing. The thing was, as I sit back and I think about DC during that time, it was like it was a normal thing to do. When I think back on it, it wasn't normal. You know, it really caused a lot of death and destruction within our neighborhoods and within our communities as well. But it was a normal thing to do because it seemed like it was the way out or the cool thing to do for the young black male in the inner city. When I was thinking about when I took trips up to Philadelphia and took trips to Baltimore and took trips to different cities as well, and every major city that I went to during that time, I seen other young black males that looked like me that was engaged in it. So I thought it was the cool thing to do. I thought it was the American way. To come to find out that it wasn't an American way. You know, it was really designed to destroy our communities and keep the black family down and separated. So, yeah.
So when I want to make sure I understand. So you talk about how well your mom, instilled values in you, and really all of your needs were being met. Mm-hmm. So your choice to be involved in the streets wasn't a reflection of her not taking care of you. It was the pain from your father and you just rebelling and deciding to be out there because your mom seems, as you've said, was doing everything that she could to make sure that you guys didn't want and need for anything. And
that's a very accurate statement. I mean, so yeah, my mom, it wasn't the fact that I wasn't getting anything. It was the fact that I just wanted to do it because I had a void inside of me, and I seen what drugs did to my father, and I had so much anger built up inside of me. So I didn't know how to release that anger because stop and think about it for a second, right? I'm 44 years old, right? And back then, the black family couldn't talk about their pain. It was about we swept everything under the rug. Mm-hmm. So no one really came to me and asked me how I felt. Like no one came to me and asked me how I felt. It was like, okay, well, he's gone. That's the situation. Suck it up. Move on. Right. And I had so much anger inside of me, so I needed to release that anger. So the only thing that at that time that I could think about was releasing my anger onto other families. And it wasn't a thing of, I was making anyone come buy the drugs. It was the thing folks was out there buying it. So I'm like, okay, well, if it's tearing apart my family, then it's going to tear apart your family too. That was the mindset that I had for a long period of time. For a long period of time.
So what stopped you?
Multiple things, right? Multiple things. The first thing was I met a young lady in high school that challenged me to become better. That young lady didn't want anything from me but my time and attention. Well, she wanted a little bit of money, but my time and attention, right? That's all she wanted. And that young lady is my wife to this day. Her name is Juanita, and we've been married for 20 plus years and been together for going on 28 years, right? We high school sweethearts. And she made me see something in myself that I didn't see. She really made me understand that the street life wasn't the life that she wanted for me. She didn't want that for her, and she didn't want that for our future family as well. Mm-hmm. Even I can sit right here and recall the conversations that we had during them days, and it was more about, why are you doing that? Like, why are you doing it? Like, what's behind it? Like, what's behind it? Why are you doing it? And the only thing I really can say back then was, everyone around me is doing it. Like, everyone around me is doing it. And I really didn't have an answer. So she challenged me to see more of myself at that time. So that was the first thing. The second thing was, we had a child. And I didn't want to see my oldest daughter without a father. So that started me to start shifting my mind as well. We had our first child around the ages of 15, 16 years old, right?
Okay.
And that made me start shifting my mind as well, because I seen how a lot of my childhood friends was dying, and they was leaving behind their seeds, and their seeds were out their father. Or I started seeing them get a whole bunch of jail time and things like that as well. So that was the second thing. The third thing was, we had my mom made me make a promise that I wouldn't bring any additional children into this world. I thought I could keep that promise, but the promise wasn't kept. So we had a second child.
Okay.
And that made me really start seeing life a little bit more different as well, because I'm like, I have two daughters now, right? Mm-hmm. And
how old were you then?
I was 17.
Okay.
I was 17 years old. So yeah, we was teen parents. So 17 years old, but it's a piece to that I think is key, that I really need to highlight. Back then, a 16-year-old was doing things that a 26-year-old was doing here in DC. So I was able to go into clubs at the age of 16 and just pay my way in. I was able to go into a car lot and buy a brand new car or a brand new truck at the age of 16 years old with cash, right? I was able to have my own apartment at the age of 16, 17 years old with someone co-signed or someone putting their name on a lease, and I'm just paying the rent. So in our minds, we was grown,
right?
And then you had to stop and think about it. From the age of 10 until roughly that time right there, I was doing grown-up things.
Right.
So I really didn't see myself as a child. I believe that my childhood was lost when my father left.
Right.
So in my mind, I was an adult, but I still had to live under my mother's rules.
Right.
You get it? Mm-hmm. Until my mother was like, something, boy, I think it's time for us to go ahead and figure out how you're going to be a grown man on your own. And I just decided to become a grown man on my own at the age of 16, 17 years old. And I decided to move out of her house, something that I shouldn't have did, but I decided to move out. So it was a combination of things. Then, it was during that time when you was getting money here in the city, you had a target on your back. So you had so many people that was trying to come take from you. You had people that was trying to come extort you. You had people that was trying to come rob you. You had people that was actually trying to come snatch you up and kidnap you and hold you for ransom. And it was a major incident that happened within our circle that caused two of my childhood friends to lose their lives. And that was a lot for me to bear, because one of them was younger than me, and the only thing he ever wanted to do was make me proud, And I had to be the one to go knock on his door and tell his mother he was no longer here. And it took everything inside me to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And when I told his mom that her only son, was no longer here, she accused me. And she accused me, she's like, something, my baby is dead because of you. And a part of it was true. So I just started just thinking different. I'm like, you know something, I really, what I thought this life was, it's not, you know. Yeah, the money was good, but losing your soul was even more greater, you know. Losing your soul was it. Losing your soul. When I just sit right here and think about it, like it's very deep, because think about you waking up every day and you just feeling hopeless. Mm-hmm. You waking up every day and the only thing that you can think about is death and destruction. You waking up every day and yeah, you can look in your closet and you can put some Gucci on. You can look in your closet, you can put some Polo on. You can look in your closet and put some other designers on, right? But when you put that on, inside of you is dead. Mm-hmm. And I always, even back then, I always thought different about my environment. And I just started thinking different. And I had a OG that was on the block. He was we called him dope fiends. He was a dope fiend. But he always used to tell me every morning when I used to go out there and do things with him, like, you different. Mm-hmm. And he's like, man, you different. I'm like, man, how can you say I'm different? He's like, man, you think different, you move different, everything about you is just different. He's like, man, this lifestyle is not for you. Like, it's not for you. And I was 18 at that time, and that really started resonating with me, right? And so the deaths happen. One of my close cousins gets shot. Then it was a downward spiral after that, right? We started looking at Fed time. We started looking at investigations. We started looking at a whole bunch of stuff. And I was fortunate enough to escape the RICO, right? I was fortunate enough to escape the RICO. May God rest the soul to my uncle. But I was able to escape RICO. And my wife she told me straight up, like, you know, even you gonna choose this life, or even you gonna choose me and your daughters. So I had to make a decision.
How old were you then?
I was 21.
Okay, so let's just not skip over the fact that you just gave a huge shout out to your wife, which I do think is amazing. And I think that it's so telling that, you know, you hear about teenage relationships and, teenagers having children, but you really don't hear the stories about, like, families sticking together and making a choice that, like, yeah, in your eyes, we may have started young, but we are in this to win. And I mean, we have grown people that can't make relationships work. So I think that that's extremely telling. But I also think that that goes to my point about you as a person. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's amazing that you had a wife and, not a wife at that time, but you had a woman that you're still with that, they always say behind every strong man is a stronger woman. And so I think that that's amazing that I can see y'all both here and that, she helped change your life and that you recognize that even in hindsight. Yeah. And so my question now is, so when you decided that you're going to make a change, what was your next step? Because had you finished high school at this point?
I finished high school. I enrolled into UDC. I really didn't have a plan, to be honest with you, because when the feds came, I went cold turkey. That I just stopped everything. Had a little bit of money tucked away, but it wasn't enough, right? So I had to make a decision on how I was going to feed my family, and I refused to go back into the streets, right? Because it was so much death and so much destruction that was associated with that life. Like, it took me years to recover from that trauma, to be honest with you. Like, and I'm gonna get to your question, but I really want the audience to really understand. I need to paint this picture.
Absolutely.
From 10 to 21, right? That's 11 years. That's 11 years. A 10-year-old mind is not fully developed yet. A 10-year-old really don't know exactly what they want to be in life. They don't know exactly what they want to do. They still trying to be a kid. They still want to be a kid. And even when I was engaged in that activity, right, I still will take my money and go buy toys. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, my toy soldiers went from being toy soldiers to guns, right? I went from being able to walk into a school with a book bag full of toys, showing it off to my friends, to walk into a school with a gun and a book bag full of drugs. Mm-hmm. Like, stop and just think about how that psychologically played on my mind.
Well, before we get into that next question, then let's talk about that. How do you feel? Like, we'll get to your success story, because I think that it's amazing. But how do you feel those 11 years mentally? Because, I mean, now is the age where we're talking about mental health, and no one talked about mental health before. But how do you honestly think that affected you, even as who you are today? But also speak on how you think it's important for young men, young women that may, that you come in contact with all the time, that you're working with, when they are experiencing the same struggles.
So I can relate to them. That's one of the reasons I feel like I'm effective in my work, because I can relate to them, right? But my mental health back then wasn't even a factor, because when you're in the wilderness, it's even you kill or be killed. Even you a prey or you the predator. Excuse me. And the thing was, I had to be the predator in order to survive. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, when I got out of it, I started a journey of healing. So majority of the people that I hurt during that time, I went back and I made it right with them. Majority of the people that was stuck in the game, that I introduced the game to, I went back and I started pulling them out of the game. And I really didn't understand the psychological effect that it had on me until I got older, until I got in my 30s, to be honest with you, because I was really trying to figure out why I had so much rage and so much anger and in such a short temper, right? And it made me really sit down and evaluate myself and really understand exactly why. And I had to go into that dark place and go all the way back to my childhood at the age of 10 to really understand what happened to me. Mm-hmm. And once I understood that, I was able to start a journey of healing, right? And the healing process took me on such a roller coaster ride. I was up, I was down, I was up, I was down. I was, it was one big ball of emotions. And the thing about that healing process was, it really showed me that, in spite of it all, that I wasn't a bad person, because for a long period of time, I tried to, I ain't gonna say I tried to, I did. I compensated my bad with monetary things, right? So I felt like money fixed everything. I felt like, if I just throw money at the problem, then I'd be okay. If my auntie called me and said, Derrick, I need to go to Atlantic City, throwing her some money, I felt like that was compensating for the bad that I was doing. My wife called me and told me she needed a fresh pair of Princess Reeboks. I go buy 5 pair, and to try to compensate for the time that I wasn't spending, right? Until I realized that wasn't doing it. I still felt that void inside of me. So I really needed to understand exactly what was that void. Mm-hmm. And by me starting the journey of healing and understanding exactly what was that void, it helped me to help other people come from out of that lifestyle.
So what was your journey of healing? What did you do to try to deal with the past?
So the first time I ever went to the mountains for a retreat, it was so refreshing, right? I sat outside, and back then I was smoking marijuana heavy. I sat outside and I hit a J just by myself. And I had an opportunity to just reflect. And I think I'm missing, I need to add this piece to me as well, is my mom and my grandmother, even my father, always taught me the power of prayer, right? So even in my midst of, I always was a praying person, right? And a spiritual person. So I sat outside and I hit that J, and it seemed like the creator just was having a conversation with me. I'm looking at the trees blowing. I'm looking at the leaves blowing. I'm just hearing the birds chirping. And the creator and I be having a conversation about my next 5 years of my life, right? And I'm sitting down there and I'm sitting on that deck and we hitting that J. And I heard it clear as day was, you're not finished. Because at that point in my life, I thought I was done. Meaning, when I mean by I say I thought I was done, I thought that I was even about to do a whole bunch of jail time or I was going to face death. So I thought I was done, but I heard the creator say as clear as day, you're not done. You're not done. So teaching life skills was, it was something that I was good at, because hold up, you want me to talk to the young people about overcoming adversity? Like, that's been my whole life, right? So, okay, I can do that. So I started teaching life skills, and the leadership of the organization was taking interest. They were like, you know something, I'm hearing good things about you from your supervisor. I'm hearing good things about you from the program manager. Keep it up, right? But everyone inside the organization knew exactly who my father was. They knew how close he was with the ED and things like that as well. But I never took advantage of that, right? I approached my work every day like my father wasn't who he is, right? I approached my work every day like I did not have a relationship with the ED. And they kept trying to advance me, and I kept saying, you know something, let me earn it. Like, every time I kept on saying, let me earn it, because I felt good about earning, right? I felt good about earning my way, because something that my oldest brother told me that sticks with me to this day is, when you earn it, they can't take it away from you, right? And he used to tell me that all the time, like, when you earn it, they can't take it away from you. So I felt good about earning my way. And when you earn your way, it makes people respect you that much more. So I earned the respect of the leadership of the organization, but also I earned the respect of my colleagues and my supervisors as well, because I never allowed my personal affiliations to affect my professional work, right? Mm-hmm. So I worked my way up. As being a residential advisor. Then I got a phone call from who was the deputy director at the time. It's like, we have a position open for our community outreach team. Would you be willing to do that? I'm like, yeah. I get to go out into the community now and pull up on my peers and pull up on the young people and give them snacks and have street corner conversations with them, and I get paid to do that. Oh, hell yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, and you give me a van to drive for 8 to 9 hours a day. Yeah, I want to do that.
Right. So
I got out there into the community, and that really propelled me to doing my community to work the way that I've been doing it all these years, right? And it really introduced me to a lot of people that took me under their wing, that I definitely contribute a lot of my success to, because they seen a young kid that was eager to do something right into the community, right? Then a lot of people was happy that I wasn't that guy that I once was, right? Right. A lot of people was happy about that. So they're like, man, you doing this now? You helping other young people get off the streets and change their lives around and getting them to education programs, getting them to job training programs and things like that as well. Man, you're doing a great work. And let me tell you how you can do this thing better. And I always been a person that always had an open mind, right? Even back then, I always listened to everyone. Now, I listen and I use the advice to the best of my abilities, right? So if you give me advice, I'm gonna listen to you all day long. Then what I do is I go back and I dissect that advice and figure out how I can tailor that to my own life, right? Now, if it's applicable, then I apply it. If it's not applicable, then I just leave it over there and give it to someone else, or I leave it for another day. Hence why I was able to give you the advice that I gave you when you first started your career in DC government, right? Because a lot of people done that for me. Mm-hmm. So I worked my way up from Covenant House being a residential advisor. I started being a community outreach worker. From being a community outreach worker, I became the shift supervisor for community outreach, right? And I made history again with that because I was the youngest shift supervisor in Covenant House history. I had folks that was double my age. I had folks that was 5-10 years older than me that I was supervising. But I never let that go to my head either, though, right? I always approached it from a team approach. Became a shift supervisor, worked my way up, and I became the director of community outreach for Covenant House, and I served in that position for 3.5 years before I left. Wow. Made history again, the youngest director in Covenant, not only in Covenant House, Washington, but Covenant House have is 2 sites per state. So it's 30, it's like about, well, it's not 2 sites. It's about, well, make a long story short, I'm about to mess the math up. It's 38 sites inside of the United States, and also it's sites over in the Middle East, not the Middle East, the Caribbeans, and also in the I apologize. Also in the in Guatemala, Honduras, and
so South America,
South America, and New Mexico. That's what I was trying to get to. Thank you for that. Yeah. So in South America as well. So I made history as being the youngest director of community outreach in Covenant throughout the whole entire Covenant House, and I had an opportunity to actually go out to Oakland, California, and train their community outreach team on how to do community outreach within the urban communities as well. Wow. So that's how I got really affiliated into this government, into the community work. Then that bug bit me, right? Because I was going to all these community meetings. I had some of the elders that was taking interest into the work that I was doing. They was taking me under their wing, introduced me to all these other political figures and other community advocates and things like that as well. And that just grew from there. That just grew from there. So that's how I got involved in community work. And I seen the impact that it was having on the younger generation and also my peers as well, right? So when I seen some young people that once looked up to me for the wrong thing, they was looking up to me for the right thing now, right? Mm-hmm. And I was able to show them that regardless of what's going on in your personal life, you still can persevere and overcome, right? You still have the spirit of fighting. So let's fight for the betterment of our community and our people. So that's what I was doing. Left Covenant House, Washington, started my own. I always been an entrepreneur by trade. I get that from my mom. My mom worked for the federal government, but she sold Avon, she sold Murray Kay. You know, she was a hustler. She had all kinds of side hustles, even to this day. You know, so I got my entrepreneur spirit from her, to be honest with you. So I left there and I jumped back into my entrepreneurship stuff. And I left Covenant House because I felt like it was time for me to leave. I felt like I built a big enough brand for myself within the community world and also the business world as well, because by me serving as the director of community outreach, it put me in some rooms with a lot of business people. And I was able to foster them relationships, you know, and I was able to understand exactly what made them donate the way that they was donating. It made me understand their business models. It made me understand like their mindsets. It put me in some rooms with them. So I fell in love with the business side of it, right? So by me falling in love with the business side, I said, you know something, let me jump out here and do some things in the business world. Mm-hmm. And so I left Covenant House and started my own consulting company. I was doing political consulting work, youth development consulting work, and also community development consulting work as well. Was doing pretty good for myself, right? Minding my business, working my consulting, doing my consulting stuff. I had some other small business stuff I was doing as well. So I jumped back into the clothing as well. So I had my own clothing brand. My mom was doing import and export from Nigeria, so I was helping her with that as well. And this was in that political small business arena, and I was enjoying it, right? Minding my business is doing good for myself, taking care of my family, getting the buzz. When the elders in the political world was calling me saying, you know, Derrick, I need I need some young people to come work on my campaign. I was able to organize 20, 30, 40 young people. Mm-hmm. I was able to give some folks in the business world that I met during my days at Covenant House to donate to campaigns and things like that. So I seen the power that came with that. So that's another bug that bit me, right? So that bit me as well. So I was trying to figure out exactly like how can I continue to marry the two and merge the two together. I was doing things in that arena right there, and I just decided to say, you know something, let me take this on a bigger scale. So I started doing some consulting work in Baltimore and also Philadelphia as well, and also in Delaware as well. And that opened up a whole bunch of other different avenues for me because that introduced me to a whole bunch of other professionals that I never was engaged with. So my name is buzzing. I'm building a good brand, a good reputation for myself in the DC political circles, right? Minding my business. I'm still minding my business. I'm just minding my business. And I get a phone call to go work on a the first phone call I got was go work on a at-large council member campaign. This particular individual, and I'm not going to call no names on this podcast because I try to keep it separate, right? I need you to come work on my campaign. You know, I'm hearing great things about you. I know that you can help me lock down east of the river here in DC. East of the river consists of Wards 7 and Ward 8. You know, that's part of Southeast and also part of Northeast as well. I know you can help me lock that down. I need you to come work on my campaign. Worked on that person's campaign. That person got elected, right? By that person getting elected, that person helped me to further my entrepreneur goals as well, you know, in the small business arena. So I've done some things in the world of construction with one of my childhood friends, done some things around that as well that was pretty lucrative for us as well.
So hang on, let me ask you this just so I can keep up and I know what administration were you working under then? Because that'll give an idea of like just timing. Who was mayor then?
Anthony Williams was mayor when I was working at DC General Hospital.
Okay.
When I worked on that at-large person campaign, Marion Barry was the mayor at the time.
Okay. Yeah. So you did work under his administration, which is amazing.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I worked under the Williams administration. Also, I worked under the Barry administration as well. Okay. And this is public record. A lot of folks know that my father and the late great Marion Barry was close friends. That's how I was able. That's one of the ways I was able to actually get introduced into the community and political world. That meeting that I shared a while back, Marion Barry was leading that meeting.
Okay.
So that's how I got introduced. And the same, and it goes back to what you said, the same thing that destroyed my father saved me, right? By my father getting clean and my father helping a whole bunch of well-off politicians and business leaders and community leaders here in this city, not only this city, but this region, overcome their own demons and overcome their own struggles. It earned him political goodwill with a lot of people. And he used that political goodwill to help his son out.
No, I mean, it starts to make sense now. Because I try to be respectful of the information that people feel comfortable sharing. And I know that for a long time, just us working together, you would talk about your father, you know, his history and being connected and stuff. But, you know, I never knew. And I mean, if you could shed some light just so our viewers understand how impactful Marion Barry was to DC.
So Marion Barry helped build the Black wealth here in DC. Excuse me. Marion Barry, when you think about politics in the inner city, if you had to put up a Mount Rushmore, he would definitely be the first face that you would place on that mountain, right? Because he helped build everything that's great about this city. He made a lot of first generational millionaires. He gave a lot of folks hope. He opened up the government for blacks in this city to actually come inside and work, right? He gave a lot of people their first jobs. He helped establish a lot of programs here in the city that the city still runs to this day, that a lot of people was able to benefit from and get a leg up and be able to lift themselves from out of poverty. So Marion Barry, he's the godfather, the Don, the forever mayor of the city. He will always be the mayor of the city regardless who sits in that seat. No shade to anyone, because he helped build what we all enjoy to this day. Not only him, but a lot of other people as well, right? And I had the privilege of actually being in the rooms and being mentored by a lot of people that was around him. Because when you think about a mayor, you also have to stop and think about the people that surrounds that person as well, right? So it's always been a thing of always been connected to the people that's always been around the top person.
Right.
So they helped me out a lot to get to where I'm at today.
So now, so you've worked with a council member who's won. Mm-hmm. So tell me about what actually got you into actually being in DC government, not on the council side, but under the mayor's administration.
Got it. So I had an opportunity to work on the campaign. And it was the best experience, one of the best experiences I've ever had working campaigns. And at that time, they was looking for some solid people to join the administration that was from Ward 8. And when you think about Ward 8, Derrick Colbert names comes up, and I say that in the most humblest way as possible because I paid my dues. I've been in this game for 25 years, right? I paid my dues. So my name came up, and they asked me, would I consider a job opportunity? I'm like, man, yeah. Working for this administration, yes. Because I believe in the vision. I believe in the person. I believe in everything that the administration stands for. I'm like, yes. And plus, it gives me an opportunity to help my people that much more, right? Because for a extended period of my career, I was outside of the government. I was affiliated with the government, but I was outside of the government doing community work. So now I saw it as an opportunity for me to actually go inside of the government and have a greater impact and be able to actually help my people that much more, right? So I got into the administration and I worked my way up. I started as the mayor's community relations person, meaning that I handle all constituent services issues for the mayor in Ward 8 and also part of East of the River as well. From that, I worked my way up to being the manager down at DSLBD for the Strategic Partnerships Initiative Division down there, where I helped a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners, black small business owners here in the city as well, grow and sustain their businesses as well. I've done that, left DSLBD, worked for the deputy mayor for greater economic opportunity at the time, worked over there as a special assistant over there, moved from there, went over to another organization inside of the government.
Can I just say I've never seen somebody.
I was trying
Earl and I would laugh and talk about it because Earl would be like, so what Derrick doing now? And I'd be like, you never believe where he's at now. Like, you have literally had like the hand of God, I feel like, has been over you. Because, I've only been here for, since 2016. And I've only been a part of DC government since 2017. Mm-hmm. And I have seen you move and I've had great opportunities, but to see you continuously like just move into these different positions, and I don't know, it's just a great thing to see, especially seeing where you started from. And I wasn't aware of everything, but to see even in the last 3 years how I've seen you move has been like an amazing thing, because I just don't know where else that can happen.
And it goes back to what I said earlier, right? I don't have no problem starting at the bottom and earning my respect. So I started at the bottom and I earned my respect every step of the way, right? And by me earning my respect, it opened up more doors for me, by me showing up every day and me working the way that I work, because my work ethic has always been who I am. Even when I was 10 years old, I always had this work ethic. Sometimes it drives my wife crazy, but this is who I am as a person, right? So I worked my way up, and it has been a promotion every step of the way. It has not been a lateral move. I have got promoted every step of the way, and I will say it's God's favor, and shout out to my boss, because the thing is, they see the value in me, and that's why I'm always getting folks to understand. Like, when you sit down at the table, you have to show folks your value. You have to be able to bring something to the table. A lot of times, what gets me upset, Christina, is a lot of people want to be at that table or be in the rooms, but they don't bring any value, right? They don't bring the A game every time that they have to sit down. They don't understand that just because you have these great ideas, you still have to be able to put in the work. And a lot of times folks don't want to put in that work. Now, I could have been jumped in line,
right,
based upon all the people that I know. But if I would have jumped in line, would I have been able to have the longevity that I have?
Right. And the fact that you've learned, and I can say this, like, the beauty of DC is I feel like there is such an opportunity here for young professionals, for old professionals. Like, is a city that, if you, like you said, can bring something to the table. And I feel like if you push and you push and you push and you get the opportunity, there's places for you to go. But what I like that about what you said is being humble enough. You didn't have to start at the bottom, but you chose to. And I think the value in that is way too often people jump into certain seats that, like you said, they're not ready to fulfill. And even then, they don't have the hustle and the strategy behind them to try to even fulfill those shoes. Sometimes we get complacent, I guess is a good word. We've been given the opportunity. We've been given this. And so people tend to not make the most out of the opportunity in front of them. And sometimes that can be catastrophic to any kind of business, government, and things like that. So I value the fact that I have always seen you, and no matter what position you are, remain humble and the same guy. And I can't say that, honestly, for everybody that I've ran into in the city, but I value that most in the people that I genuinely talk to. And I think for me, that's one of the things that's always been like stand out. Like, what you've portrayed here tonight is the same thing that I've known about you, that I can vouch for you being the same person, no matter how often we speak, which isn't a lot now, especially with me not being in government, but you've always been the same guy. And I think that that's probably also played into your success, because Derrick is exactly who he says he's going to be. He's not going to try to be someone else. And so I think that's beautiful. And I also think that it's beautiful that you have spent your career giving back. And really impacting the youth. I saw you on YouTube the other night, and I remember one thing you said to the kids was, "You are great." Like, and you said, if no one else tells you tonight, I want you to know you are great. And I mean, we were sitting there last night, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that this video existed. But, I think that, it takes a lot to kind of change the climate here in DC. And I think that it's amazing that you are still striving to do that. And I know that we could keep going all night, but I want to ask you one simple question.
Sure.
Who do you want? What do you want people to really understand? Like, what's your story of when people think about you? A, what do you want them to remember most? And then B, if you can tie it into, like, what is your goal for the future as it relates to, your career and things like that?
So the first thing I would say, I would want people to remember Derrick as someone that always see the great qualities in everyone, right? Someone that never has subscribed to the status quo. Someone that always going to push the limit. Someone that always going to show other people that it's possible to achieve whatever that you want to achieve in life, regardless of the struggles, the trials, the tribulations, the bad things that people say about you, all that stuff, right? Don't use that stuff. Don't allow them things to discourage you, but use it as motivation to show the world that you are a great person, right? My plans for the future, I really don't know. I truly don't know. I love being in the world of business. I love being in the world of politics, right? And I love being a philanthropist. So I really don't know at this moment. These days I allow the Creator to kind of direct my path. I do know that a lot of folks want to position me to be one of the political leaders in this city. If God, that's what God has for me, then I will have to have that conversation with God on the mountaintop again. But I don't know. But I truly want to be remembered as someone that took all the negative things that was said about my great ward, the Great Ward 8, and flipped it and showed not only this city, but showed this world that greatness comes from out of Ward 8. That greatness resides inside of Ward 8. That greatness resides inside every person that walks this earth, right? And at the end of the day, never allow anyone to tell you that you can't achieve anything. And my last thing is, it just came to me, right? Always remember the things that you have experienced in your past was preparing you for your today and pushing you into your tomorrow.
So before we close out, one question that I'd have to ask.
You burn the question?
Yes. How do you think DC should be operating to continue to grow, but also to take care of its natives? 1 minute, go.
DC is in a very unique space right now as it relates to growth, right? And the only way that you continue to sustain the growth is you have to look out for the natives. And by looking out for, because the natives are going to make sure that the city is taken care of. When you open up opportunities for the natives, such as more small business loaning, when you open up more opportunities such as reduce rates or reduce tuitions for UDC, when you open up opportunities for the natives to actually become homeowners and business owners and entrepreneurs in the city, then they're gonna take care of the city that they love and that they love. And on top of that, once they take care of the city that they love, then the city gonna take care of them, and the city gonna take care of everyone else as well. So you have to make sure you take care of the natives first.
So I think that's.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome answer, and hopefully, we continue to do that with things that are changing, and the dynamics of the city changing. But what I can say is, being somebody that's a guest to the city, it's been an amazing part of our lives.
Can I say one thing? And I apologize for cutting you off.
No, you're fine.
The natives have to also be willing to embrace the guests, right? Because the guest brings a whole different, unique perspective into the equation, right? But also the natives have to be willing to not only complain, but get in the game and help fight and change the game for the betterment of all.
I love that. So with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I really hope that you can pull some information and get, some nuggets out of Derrick Colbert's story about triumph, overcoming. Nevertheless, I persisted. Just a beautiful story. And I thank you guys tonight for following us. Stay in touch with us. The information to subscribe and follow us on IG will be below. So thank you again so much for being here tonight. I'll talk to you next time.